Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched her world die. Through the large windows, she could see the enemy ships getting closer. Their dark metal hulls blocked out the stars. The alien fleet was huge. Too huge for her small group of human ships to fight. "Captain, the enemy is moving into attack position," said Lieutenant Torres from his station. His voice was calm, but Sarah could hear the fear underneath. They all knew what was coming. The colony world of New Geneva spun slowly below them. 3 million people lived on that planet. Families, children, old people, who had worked their whole lives to build something good. Now the Vexi were coming to destroy it all. Sarah had been fighting these aliens for 2 years. She had seen them burn entire worlds. They never took prisoners. They never showed mercy. Every human they found, they killed. Every human city they found, they turned to ash. "How many ships do we have left?" Sarah asked. 12, Captain. The cruiser Brave Heart took heavy damage in the last fight. She can barely move. The destroyers Fast Strike and Night Hunter are almost out of ammunition. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 12 ships. The Vexi had over 200. It was not a fair fight. It had never been a fair fight. What about the evacuation ships? Still, loading people from the planet, they need more time. Time. That was the one thing they did not have. The enemy fleet was already moving closer to New Geneva. Their big guns were charging up. Soon they would start shooting at everything that moved. The Vexi ships looked like giant insects made of black metal. They had long arms that stuck out from their sides. These arms held their biggest weapons. When they fired, entire cities disappeared in bright flashes of light. Sarah had fought them at Beta Station. She had seen a Vexi dreadnought destroy a whole space station with one shot. 5,000 people had been on that station. Now there was nothing left but floating metal pieces. "Captain, the enemy is sending us a message." "Put it on screen." The main display flickered. Then an alien face appeared. It looked like a lizard mixed with a spider. Its skin was dark green and covered in scales. It had 6 eyes that glowed red in the darkness. When it spoke, its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Admiral Cathara the Conqueror. You are the last humans in this system. Your resistance ends now. Surrender your ships, and we will give you a quick death." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth Forces. We will never surrender to you." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Then you will die slowly. We will destroy your ships one by one. We will make you watch as we burn the planet below. Your species ends today." The screen went dark. Sarah turned to her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for orders. These were good people. They had families too. Some of them had children on the planet below. "All ships, this is the Defiance. Form up for Defense Pattern 7. We buy the evacuation ships as much time as we can." Her small fleet moved into position. The fast destroyers went to the sides. The bigger cruisers stayed in the middle. It was a good formation. It would not save them, but it was good. The Vexi fleet came forward like a dark wave. Their ships were 3 times bigger than human ships. Their weapons were stronger. Their shields were better. But humans had one thing the aliens did not understand. Humans would fight even when they could not win. "Captain, the evacuation ships are reporting problems. The civilian ships are old. They break down easy. It will take at least 2 more hours to get everyone off the planet." 2 hours. Sarah looked at the enemy fleet. They would be in weapons range in 15 minutes. "Send a message to all evacuation ships. Tell them to hurry. Tell them we will hold the line as long as we can." The first enemy shots came 10 minutes later. Bright beams of energy crossed the darkness between the fleets. The human ships fired back. Their missiles exploded against alien shields like fireworks. The cruiser Braveheart tried to move, but her engines were too damaged. A Vexi destroyer targeted her. The alien ship fired 3 times. The first shot broke through the Braveheart's shields. The second shot tore a hole in her hull. The third shot went into the reactor room. The Braveheart exploded in a ball. of white fire. 700 people died in that moment. All ships spread out. "Do not let them target us easily," Sarah ordered, but it was no use. The enemy had too many ships. Every minute more human vessels died. The destroyer Fast Strike lost her engines and started spinning out of control. The cruiser Stormbringer fought 3 alien ships at once until her guns went silent forever. Sarah watched her fleet die piece by piece. Soon only a few ships would be left, then the aliens would go to the planet. 3 million people would die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Captain, look at this. The sensors are picking up something strange." Lieutenant Torres was staring at his screen with a confused look. "What is it?" "There is something out there. Something big, but it is not showing up clearly. The readings keep changing." Sarah moved to his station. The sensor display showed empty space, but there were small signs that something was wrong. Energy readings that did not make sense. Gravity waves that came from nowhere. Could it be another enemy fleet? "No, Captain. This is different. It is like something is there, but our sensors cannot see it properly." The battle continued around. The more human ships died. The evacuation ships on the planet sent desperate messages asking for more time. Time they did not have. Then the sensors went crazy. Every screen on the bridge started flashing warnings. Energy readings jumped off the charts. The gravity detectors showed impossible numbers. "What is happening?" Sarah shouted over the noise of alarms. "Something is materializing out there. Something huge. Bigger than anything in our database." The space in front of the human fleet started to change. It looked like the air was bending, like reality itself was being twisted. Then something began to appear. At first it was just a shadow, a dark shape that seemed to eat the light around it. Then it became more solid, more real. It was a ship, but not like any ship Sarah had ever seen. The vessel was enormous, bigger than the largest HFY dreadnought. Its hull was smooth and dark like black glass. Strange patterns of light moved across its surface. It looked deadly and beautiful at the same time. Where did that come from? Someone whispered. The alien ship just hung there in space, silent, waiting. The HFY fleet had stopped moving. They seemed surprised by this new arrival. Admiral Cathara was probably trying to figure out what it was. Sarah tried to contact the strange ship. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chun. Please identify yourself." No answer. "Unknown vessel. Please respond. Are you here to help us?" Still nothing. The HFY made the first move. 3 of their destroyers turned toward the mysterious ship and fired their main guns. Bright beams of energy crossed space and hit the dark hull. The beams just disappeared, like they had never existed. Then the unknown ship moved. It was fast. Faster than anything that big should be able to move. In seconds it was among the HFY destroyers. Weapons appeared on its hull. Weapons that glowed with strange blue light. The unknown ship fired. The 3 HFY destroyers simply vanished. No explosion, no fire. They were just gone. The alien fleet pulled back in confusion. Admiral Cathara was probably screaming orders at his ships. Sarah stared at the mysterious vessel. What was it? Where had it come from? And why was it fighting the HFY? The battle was about to change. Sarah could feel it. Something new had entered their war. Something dangerous and powerful. Something that might save them all. Or destroy them. The mysterious ship hung in space like a dark shadow against the stars. Sarah Chun could not stop staring at it. The vessel was bigger than anything she had ever seen. Its black hull seemed to bend light around it. Strange blue patterns moved across its surface like living electricity. "Captain, I am getting readings from that ship," Lieutenant Torres said. His voice was quiet with wonder. "The energy output is incredible. It is like a small star contained in metal." The HFY fleet had stopped their attack on the human ships. All their guns were now pointed at the unknown vessel. Admiral Cathara was probably trying to decide what to do. 3 of his destroyers had just vanished without a trace. Sarah opened a communication channel to all her remaining ships. "All vessels, hold position. Do not fire on the unknown ship. Repeat, do not fire on the unknown ship. She did not know if this mysterious vessel was friend or enemy, but it had destroyed Vexai ships. That made it useful for now. The alien fleet began to move. The Vexai were forming a new battle line. Their biggest dreadnoughts moved to the front. Their weapons started charging up. Sarah could see the energy building in their main guns. They are going to attack it with everything they have, Torres said. The first salvo came from 12 Vexai cruisers. Bright beams of energy shot across space toward the dark ship. The beams were powerful enough to destroy entire cities. But when they hit the mysterious vessel, something strange happened. The beams just stopped. They hit an invisible barrier around the ship and spread out like water hitting a rock. The energy flowed around the hull in beautiful patterns of light. Then it disappeared completely. Their shields are absorbing the energy, Torres said in amazement. But I cannot detect any shield generators. It is like the ship itself is eating the weapons fire. The Vexai tried again. This time they used their plasma cannons. Balls of superheated gas flew toward the unknown ship. Each one could melt through. The strongest armor humans had ever built. The plasma balls hit the dark hull and vanished. Just like the energy beams, Admiral Cathara appeared on the communication screen again. His 6 red eyes were glowing with anger. Unknown vessel. You will identify yourself. This is Vexai space now. You will surrender or be destroyed. The mysterious ship did not answer. The alien admiral's face twisted with rage. Very well. All ships target the unknown vessel. Use maximum firepower. Destroy it completely. The entire Vexai fleet opened fire at once. Over 200 ships shot their weapons at the same time. The space between the fleets lit up like a new sun. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and fusion missiles all flew toward the dark ship. Sarah had to shield her eyes from the brightness. When the light faded, she looked for the mysterious vessel. It should have been destroyed. Nothing could survive that. Much firepower, but the ship was still there. It had not moved. It had not even been damaged. Impossible, Torres whispered. The unknown ship began to change. Parts of its hull opened up. Weapons appeared from hidden spaces. They were unlike anything in any military database. They glowed with the same blue light that ran across the ship's surface. Captain, I am detecting massive energy buildup in those weapons. The power levels are off the charts. The mysterious ship fired. The weapons did not make bright beams like human or Vexai guns. Instead, they shot out what looked like dark lightning. The bolts moved through space like living things. They curved and twisted as they flew toward their targets. The first bolt hit a Vexai cruiser. The ship simply came apart. Not exploded, not burned. It just fell into pieces like someone had taken it apart with invisible hands. The second bolt hit a dreadnought. The massive ship tried to raise its shields, but the dark lightning went right through them. The dreadnought broke in half. Both halves drifted away into space. More bolts fired from the unknown ship. Each one destroyed a Vexai vessel with perfect accuracy. In less than 2 minutes, 15 alien ships were gone. The Vexai fleet pulled back. Even Admiral Cathara seemed shocked by what he was seeing. What kind of weapons are those? Sarah asked no one in particular. I do not know, Captain. The energy patterns are completely unknown. It is like they are using physics we have never discovered. The mysterious ship stopped firing. It hung in space again, waiting. The blue patterns on its hull pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Admiral Cathara tried a different approach. He sent a squadron of fast attack ships around the unknown vessel. They would try to hit it from behind while the main fleet attacked from the front. The dark ship seemed to know what they were doing. Without turning around, weapons appeared on its rear section. The attack ships tried to fire, but they never got the chance. Dark lightning reached out and touched each one. They all died in silence. It has weapons on all sides, Torres said. And somehow it knew the attack ships were coming before they got into position. Sarah was beginning to understand that this was not just a powerful ship. This was something far beyond anything humans or Vexai had ever built. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. The alien fleet regrouped. Admiral Cathara was talking to his other commanders. Sarah could see their ships moving into a new formation. They were going to try something else. Captain, the HFY are charging their planet killer weapon. Sarah's blood went cold. The planet killer was the most terrible weapon the aliens had. It could destroy entire worlds with one shot. They had used it on Earth's colonies before. Billions of people had died. The weapon was built into their largest dreadnought. The ship was over 10 kilometers long and covered in armor thicker than a city building. It moved slowly to the front of the alien fleet. "They are going to try to destroy the unknown ship and the planet at the same time," Torres said. The planet killer began to charge. Energy flowed into its main gun from the entire HFY fleet. Other ships connected their power systems to the dreadnought. The weapon grew brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at. Sarah tried to contact the mysterious ship again. "Unknown vessel, they are preparing to fire a planet-killing weapon. You need to move. You need to protect yourself." Still no answer. The planet killer fired. A beam of pure energy shot out from the alien dreadnought. It was wider than a city and brighter than a star. The beam could cut through anything. It could destroy moons. It could crack planets in half. The beam hit the mysterious ship. For a moment, Sarah thought the unknown vessel was gone. The energy was so bright she could not see anything else. Then the light began to fade. The mysterious ship was still there. Not only was it undamaged, but something incredible was happening. The ship was absorbing the planet killer beam. The energy was flowing into its hull like water being poured into a container. The blue patterns on the ship grew brighter. Much brighter. The vessel began to glow with stored power. Then it fired back. The unknown ship shot a single bolt of dark lightning at the alien dreadnought. But this bolt was different. It was huge. It was filled with all the energy the ship had just absorbed. The bolt hit the planet killer dreadnought and went right through it. The massive alien ship exploded from the inside out. The explosion was so big it destroyed 6 other HFY ships that were too close. Admiral Cathara's face appeared on the screen again. For the first time, Sarah could see fear in his red eyes. "What are you?" he demanded. "What species built you? Answer me." The mysterious ship finally responded, but not with words. Instead, it began to move toward the alien fleet. It moved slowly and smoothly, like a hunting animal stalking its prey. The HFY panicked. Ships scattered in all directions. Some tried to run away. Others fired wildly at the approaching vessel. Nothing worked. The unknown ship picked them off one by one with its dark lightning weapons. Sarah watched in amazement as the tide of battle turned completely around. Minutes ago, the human fleet was about to be destroyed. Now the mighty HFY armada was running in terror from a single ship. "Captain, the alien fleet is retreating. Admiral Cathara's command ship is pulling back with the others." But the mysterious ship was not done. It fired several bolts at the fleeing aliens. Each bolt found its target. Admiral Cathara's command ship tried to escape, but a dark lightning bolt caught it just as it was about to jump to hyperspace. The ship broke apart in a shower of metal and fire. The surviving HFY ships jumped away into hyperspace. In less than 20 minutes, an entire alien fleet had been defeated by one unknown vessel. The mysterious ship stopped moving. It turned slowly until it was facing the human fleet. Sarah could feel it watching them, studying them. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the unknown ship. Put it through." A new voice came over the communication system. It sounded human, but also strange, like it was speaking from very far away. "Human vessels, you are safe for now. The immediate threat has been eliminated." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Captain Sarah Chun. Who are you? Where did you come from?" There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again. "That is a complicated question, Captain Chun. We will explain when there is time. For now, continue your evacuation of the planet below. More HFY fleets will come soon. Will you help us?" Another pause. "Yes, Captain, we will help you. We have been waiting a very long time to help you." The transmission ended. The mysterious ship moved away from the human fleet and took up a position between them in deep space. It was standing guard 3 days had passed since the mysterious ship destroyed the Vex-High fleet. Captain Sarah Chun sat in her ready room aboard the Defiance, staring at reports that made no sense. Her science teams had been studying the unknown vessel from a distance. Every scan they ran gave impossible results. "The ship appears to be made of materials that do not exist," Dr. Martinez had written in his report. "The hull seems to change its molecular structure depending on what hits it. When energy weapons strike it, it becomes like a mirror. When physical objects hit it, it becomes like empty space." Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept well since the battle. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those dark lightning bolts destroying alien ships. The power of that vessel was beyond anything she could understand. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Lieutenant Torres entered with a worried look on his face. "Captain, we are receiving another transmission from the unknown ship. The voice wants to speak with you directly. Put it through to my personal communicator." Torres nodded and left. A moment later, Sarah's communication device came to life. The same strange voice from before spoke to her. "Captain Chun, this is the ship you call unknown. We need to talk, face to face." Sarah sat up straighter. "Face to face? Are you asking me to come aboard your ship?" "No. We will come to you, prepare a meeting room on your vessel. We will transport over in 1 hour." The communication ended before Sarah could ask any questions. Transport over? How were they going to do that? Human ships did not have that kind of technology. Sarah called her senior officers to the main conference room. Commander Rodriguez, Dr. Martinez, Lieutenant Torres, and Chief Engineer Park all gathered around the table. They looked as confused as she felt. "They want to meet with us," Sarah told them. "They said they would transport over to our ship." "Transport how?" Commander Rodriguez asked. "We do not have transporter technology, neither do the Vex-High. I guess we will find out." They did not have to wait long. Exactly 1 hour later, the conference room filled with strange blue light. The light swirled and danced in the air. Then it began to take shape. 3 figures appeared in the room. They looked human, but something was different about them. Their skin was pale, almost white. Their eyes were larger than normal and glowed with a soft blue light. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of the same dark material as their ship. The tallest figure stepped forward. When it spoke, Sarah recognized the voice from the communications. "Captain Chun, I am sorry for the dramatic entrance. My name is Lazarus. I am the intelligence that guides the ship you have been studying." Sarah stood up slowly. "You are human, but different." "Yes and no. We were human once, a very long time ago. Please sit. We have much to explain." Everyone sat down around the table. Lazarus took a seat across from Sarah. The other 2 figures remained standing like guards. "Where do you come from?" Sarah asked. "We come from a timeline that no longer exists. A future where humanity lost the war against the Vex-High. Earth fell 300 years ago in our time. Every human colony was destroyed. Our species was extinct." Dr. Martinez leaned forward. "That is impossible." "Time travel is just theory." Lazarus looked at him with those glowing blue eyes. "Doctor, many things that seem impossible become possible when your entire species is about to die. We had nothing left to lose." "How did you get here?" Sarah asked. "The last humans in our timeline built our ship. It took them 50 years. They put everything they had into it. All their knowledge, all their hope, all their rage at what the Vex-High had done to us." Lazarus touched the table with one pale finger. The surface lit up and showed a holographic image. It was Earth, but not the Earth Sarah knew. This Earth was dead. Its surface was black and cracked. No life remained. "This was our home in the timeline we came from. The Vex-High turned it into this after they killed the last humans. They did the same thing to every world our species had ever touched. The image changed. Now it showed other planets. All dead, all burned." Sarah counted dozens of worlds that had once been human colonies. "We could not bring back the dead," Lazarus continued, "but we could try to prevent their deaths. So we built our ship and sent it back through time. We came here to change history." Commander Rodriguez spoke up. "Why did you wait so long to help?" US, you could have appeared months ago when the war started. We had to wait for the right moment. If we appeared too early, we might have changed history in the wrong way. We needed the Vexi to show their true nature. We needed humanity to face extinction. Only then would the galaxy believe what these aliens really are. Sarah was beginning to understand. You did not just come here to save us, you came here to start something bigger. Exactly. In our timeline, humanity fought alone. We were strong, but not strong enough. This time will be different. This time we will unite the galaxy against the Vexi. The holographic display changed again. Now it showed star maps with dozens of different species marked in different colors. The Vexi have been conquering the galaxy for thousands of years, but they do not kill everyone. They keep some alive as slaves. Others escape and hide in the dark places between stars. Many species that the galaxy thinks are extinct are actually still alive. Dr. Martinez studied the star map. How many species are we talking about? Over 200. Some are small groups with only a few ships. Others have rebuilt their civilizations in secret. All of them hate the Vexi. All of them want revenge. But they have never worked together, Sarah said. Correct. They do not trust each other. They do not know how to find each other. They have lost hope. But our ship carries something that can change all of that. Lazarus gestured, and the holographic display showed the interior of his ship. Sarah could see vast chambers filled with glowing crystals and strange machines. Our ship does not just carry weapons and shields. It carries the combined knowledge of every species the Vexi destroyed in our timeline. When those species died, some of their people escaped to our time. They shared their science, their culture, their technology. All of it is stored in our ship's memory banks. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. You have the technology of hundreds of extinct civilizations. Yes, and we will share it, but not just with humanity. We will give it to every species that joins our alliance. Together we will become stronger than the Vexi have ever imagined possible. Chief Engineer Park had been quiet during the conversation. Now he spoke up. What about the paradox? If you change history, your timeline will never exist. You will never be built. Lazarus smiled sadly. That is the price we are willing to pay. Our timeline was a nightmare. If we can prevent it from happening, then our existence will have meaning. You are willing to erase yourselves to save us, Sarah said quietly. Not just to save humanity, to save everyone. The Vexi are a plague that spreads across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. In our timeline, they eventually ran out of species to conquer. Then they turned on each other. In the end, they destroyed themselves too. The galaxy became empty, dead. We will not let that happen again. The holographic display showed the Vexi Empire as it existed now. It was enormous. It covered half the galaxy. How can we possibly fight something that big? Commander Rodriguez asked. The same way a virus fights a body, Lazarus replied. We do not attack their strength. We attack their weakness. The Vexi Empire is built on fear and slavery. They rule by making everyone afraid to resist them. But fear works both ways. The display changed to show Vexi supply lines and communication networks. They have grown overconfident. They do not expect real resistance anymore. Their empire is spread thin. If we can convince the galaxy that the Vexi can be beaten, if we can show other species that victory is possible, then the empire will start to fall apart from the inside. Sarah studied the star maps. She could see what Lazarus was talking about. The Vexi controlled many systems, but they could not be everywhere at once. What do you need from us? She asked. We need you to be the first. Humanity will be the core of the new alliance. Your species has something special. You never give up. Even when you cannot win, you keep fighting. Other species respect that, and in return, we will give you technology that will make your ships as powerful as ours. We will teach you to fight the Vexi more effectively. And we will help you contact the hidden civilizations. Together, we will build an alliance that can stand against the Empire. Sarah looked around the table at her officers. She could see the hope in their eyes. For the first time since the war began, they had a real chance to win. There is one more thing you should know, Lazarus said. The Vexai are not the real enemy, they are just soldiers. Something else controls them. Something ancient and evil that hides in the dark spaces between galaxies. That is what we really came here to fight. The room went quiet. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What is it? We call it the hunger. It is older than any civilization in this galaxy. It feeds on death and suffering. The Vexai are just its latest tools. But that is a problem for another day. First, we must deal with the Empire. Lazarus stood up. Captain Chin, will you help us? Will humanity join our alliance? Sarah did not hesitate. Yes, we will help you. What do we do first? First, we give your ships the ability to survive what is coming. The Vexai. Captain Sarah Chun watched as her ship transformed before her eyes. The Eternal Vigil had been sharing its technology with the human fleet for 2 weeks now. Strange machines from Lazarus's ship attached themselves to human vessels like metal. Spiders. They crawled over the hulls, rebuilding everything they touched. The Defiance was no longer the same ship she had commanded for 2 years. Her weapons were 3 times more powerful. Her shields could stop attacks that would have destroyed her before. Her engines could push her faster than any human ship had ever traveled. Captain, the upgrades to the weapon systems are complete. Chief Engineer Park reported. The new guns use the same dark energy technology as the Eternal Vigil. We can punch through Vexai shields like they are made of paper. Sarah nodded, but she was worried. The technology was incredible, but it came with a warning from Lazarus. The Vexai were learning. They were adapting their weapons and shields to fight the new technology. Each battle would be harder than the last. Any word from the scout ships? She asked. The fast runner just reported in. She found 3 Vexai supply convoys in the outer rim, all lightly defended. Perfect targets for our new weapons. Sarah smiled. For the first time in the war, humanity was hunting the aliens instead of running from them. The upgraded human ships could outfight anything the Vexai had except their largest dreadnoughts. Send the attack orders to Squadrons 3 and 5. Tell them to hit fast and get out. We want to hurt their supply lines, not get trapped in a big fight. As Torres sent the orders, Sarah thought about the bigger picture. The human attacks were just part of Lazarus's plan. The Eternal Vigil was broadcasting secret messages across the galaxy. Messages that were reaching species everyone thought were dead. The first to answer had been the Zephyrians. Sarah remembered when their ships appeared near Jupiter. At first, her crews thought they were asteroids drifting through space. Then the rocks opened up to reveal beautiful crystal ships inside. The Zephyrians were not like any other species humanity had met. They were living crystals that grew their technology instead of building it. Their ships were actually alive. They could heal damage by growing new crystal armor. Their weapons fired pure light that could cut through anything. Their leader was called the First Song. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music made of wind chimes. We have hidden in the asteroid fields for 300 years, the First Song had told Sarah during their first meeting. The Vexai destroyed our homeworld and enslaved our people. We thought we were the only ones left. But your ship of the future has shown us that other survivors exist. We will fight with you. The Zephyrians brought 50 ships to the Alliance. Not many, but each ship was as powerful as a human cruiser. More importantly, they brought knowledge of other hidden species. The second group to join was even stranger. They called themselves the Architects. Sarah was not sure if they were alive or if they were machines. They looked like floating balls of pure energy wrapped in metal shells. They could pass through solid matter like ghosts, but they could also become solid when they wanted to. The Architects had been the galaxy's greatest builders before the Vexai came. They had created space stations the size of moons and cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants. When the aliens attacked, most Architects died. But some escaped by turning themselves into energy and hiding inside the power cores of abandoned space stations. We have waited in the darkness for so long, their spokesperson had said. Its voice sounded like electricity singing. We forgot what it felt like to hope. But the ship from tomorrow has reminded us. We will build weapons for your alliance. We will build ships, we will build victory. The architects only had a dozen vessels, but they were mobile construction platforms. They could build new ships and weapons faster than any factory humanity had ever imagined, but the most important group to join the alliance was also the most surprising. They were Vex-Hi. Not all of the alien empire supported the war. Some Vex-Hi had tried to resist when their leaders decided to conquer the galaxy. These rebels had been hunted down and killed by their own people. But a few had escaped. Commander Kethver led 3 ships full of Vex-Hi refugees. When his vessels approached the human fleet, every gun in the alliance had targeted them. Sarah had almost given the order to fire, but Lazarus had stopped her. "These are the ones we have been waiting for," he said. "They know the Empire's secrets. They know how the Vex-Hi really fight." Kethver was different from other Vex-Hi Sarah had seen. His scales were lighter in color, almost silver instead of dark green. His 6 eyes were blue instead of red. When he spoke, his voice was sad instead of angry. "My people have become monsters," he told the alliance leaders. "They were not always like this. Once we were explorers and traders, but something changed us. Something made us hungry for war and conquest. I do not know what it was, but I know it was not natural." The rebel Vex-Hi brought crucial intelligence about enemy fleet movements and weak points in their defenses. More importantly, they proved that not all aliens were evil. Some could be saved. Sarah's communication device beeped. It was a message from Lazarus aboard the Eternal Vigil. "Captain Chun, please join me on my ship. We have received responses from 12 more hidden species. It is time to plan our first major operation." Sarah took a shuttle to the Eternal Vigil. Every time she visited the ship, she discovered something new. Today, Lazarus led her to a room she had never seen before. It was enormous, with walls that showed images of stars and planets. "This is our war room," Lazarus explained. "From here, we can coordinate operations across the entire galaxy." Representatives from all the allied species were already waiting. The first song's crystal body chimed softly in greeting. The architect spokesperson flickered with electrical patterns that meant hello in their language. Commander Kethver nodded respectfully, but there were new faces too. A cat-like creature with silver fur represented the Hunters of Kepler. 7. A being that looked like a walking tree spoke for the Forest Worlds Alliance. A small robot no bigger than Sarah's hand carried the voice of the Machine Collective. 12. "More species have agreed to join us," Lazarus announced. "The Void Swimmers, the Star Whisperers, the Iron Brotherhood, and 9 others. Our alliance now includes 47 different species." Sarah was amazed. 47 species, all working together against the Vex-Hi Empire. Many of them had been enemies of each other before the aliens came. Now they were united by their hatred of their conquerors. "What is our first target?" The first song asked, its voice like distant thunder. Lazarus touched the wall, and a star map appeared. It showed a system with 6 planets and a large space station. "The Nexus Depot," he said. "It is the main supply hub for the entire Vex-Hi Third Fleet. They use it to store fuel, ammunition, and food for over 500 ships." Commander Kethver studied the display. "It is heavily defended. Orbital weapons platforms, patrol fleets, and a garrison of 50,000 troops on the station itself." "Normally, yes," Lazarus agreed. "But our intelligence tells us that most of the defenders have been moved to other systems. The Vex-Hi are spread thin trying to hunt down our raids. The depot is vulnerable." The architect's spokesperson flickered brightly. "If we can destroy their supplies, their third fleet will be crippled. They will have to retreat or starve." "Exactly, and when they retreat, 3 entire star systems will be free. Systems with billions of people who are currently slaves." Sarah looked at the tactical display. It would not be an easy fight, but it was possible. The Alliance now had over 200 ships. Most were small, but they all carried the new technology from the Eternal Vigil. "How do we coordinate an attack with so many different species?" she asked. "Our ships all fight differently. Our weapons work differently. Our communication systems are not compatible." Lazarus smiled. That is the beauty of diversity, Captain. The Vexai have spent centuries learning to fight humans, Zephyrians, and architects separately. They have never faced all of us working together. Their tactical computers will not know how to respond. He was right. The Vexai had conquered each species by learning their fighting styles and adapting to them. But fighting 47 species at once would overwhelm their ability to adapt. The hunters will use their speed to attack the outer defenses, Lazarus continued. The Zephyrians will use their crystal ships to absorb and redirect the station's weapon fire. The architects will phase through the shields and plant explosives inside the station. The forest worlds will use their bioships to release spores that will disable the enemy's life support systems. And the humans? Sarah asked. Humans will do what they do best. You will lead the charge straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Other species fight to win. Humans fight to protect others. That is why you will command the overall operation. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. 47 species were putting their trust in her leadership. Millions of lives depended on the success of this mission. When do we attack? She asked. In 3 days. That will give us time to position our forces and make final preparations. But Captain, there is something else you need to know. Lazarus's expression became serious. Our spies have detected unusual activity in the Vexai command structure. They are receiving orders. The Nexus system was the heart of the Vexai Empire. Captain Sarah Chun stared at the massive space station through the viewscreen of the Defiance. The structure was bigger than any city on Earth. It had factories, shipyards, command centers, and living quarters for millions of Vexai. Most importantly, it controlled the psychic network that allowed the Empire to coordinate all their fleets across the galaxy. All Alliance ships, this is Captain Chun, Sarah spoke into her communicator. We are beginning our final approach. Remember, this is not just about destroying a space station. We are here to break the chains that bind the galaxy. Around her, the greatest fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. 200 ships from 47 different species moved toward their target. Crystal vessels from the Zephyrians caught starlight and turned it into weapons. Energy beings from the architects phased in and out of normal space. Hunters from Kepler-7 prowled at the edges of the formation like cosmic wolves. The eternal vigil led them all. Lazarus had positioned his ship at the front of the attack force. His dark hull pulsed with blue energy patterns that seemed to hypnotize anyone who looked at them too long. Captain, the Vexai defense fleet is moving to intercept us, Lieutenant Torres reported. I count 300 enemy ships. They outnumber us, but most of their vessels are smaller than ours. Sarah was not worried about the defending ships. The Alliance had fought the Vexai many times in the past month. Each battle had proven that their combined tactics were superior to anything the aliens could field. What worried her was the space station itself. Intelligence reports said it was more than just a military base. It was some kind of relay station that amplified psychic signals from across the galaxy. If the reports were true, destroying it would severely damage the entity that controlled the Vexai Empire. Begin the attack, Sarah ordered. The battle started exactly as planned. The fast ships of the hunter species shot forward first. They were small and quick, darting between the enemy formations like angry insects. Their weapons were not powerful, but they did not need to be. They were just meant to confuse the Vexai and draw their attention, while the hunters kept the enemy busy. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians moved into position. The first song had explained their plan to Sarah before the battle. Instead of fighting the station's defenses, they would absorb them. The massive space station began firing its main weapons. Beams of energy powerful enough to destroy entire fleets shot out toward the Alliance ships. But instead of dodging, the Zephyrian vessels moved directly into the path of the weapons. Fire. Sarah watched in amazement as the crystal ships absorbed the energy attacks. Their transparent hulls glowed brighter and brighter as they soaked up the station's firepower. Then, when they could hold no more energy, they fired it all back at the station. The redirected weapon fire hit the Nexus station's shields with tremendous force. The energy barriers flickered and sparked under the assault. "Shields are down to 60%, Torres reported. "The Zephyrians are doing incredible work." That was the signal for the architects to begin their part of the plan. The energy beings phased their ships out of normal space and passed directly through the station's shields. They materialized inside the structure and began placing explosive charges on critical systems, but something was wrong. Sarah could feel it even before the alarm started ringing. "Captain, the Vexai are doing something strange," Torres said with worry in his voice. "Their ships are not fighting back. They are just sitting there." Sarah looked at the tactical display. Torres was right. The enemy defense fleet had stopped moving. They were not firing their weapons. They were not even trying to defend themselves. As Alliance ships destroyed them one by one. "Lazarus, what is happening?" Sarah called to the Eternal Vigil. The reply came immediately, but Lazarus's voice sounded strained. "Captain, something is taking control of the Vexai forces. The psychic network is being used by something else. Something much more powerful than we expected." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "The hunger?" "Yes, and it is not just controlling the Vexai anymore. It is using the station to try to control our ships too." As if summoned by their conversation, a new voice filled the communication channels of every ship in the Alliance fleet. It was not spoken words. It was thoughts pushed directly into their minds. The voice was ancient and cold and filled with an endless desire to consume everything. "Little species, you think you can resist US? You think your alliance can challenge our power? You are wrong." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair as waves of psychic pressure washed over her mind. Around the bridge, her crew members were holding their heads in pain. The alien voice was trying to take control of their thoughts. "All ships, maintain formation," Sarah managed to say through gritted teeth. "Do not listen to the voice. Focus on your missions." But it was getting harder to think clearly. The psychic attack was growing stronger. Sarah could feel the hunger trying to push into her mind. It wanted to make her surrender. It wanted to make her worship it like the Vexai did. "Captain, some of our ships are turning around," Torres said with panic in his voice. "The Forest World's vessels are breaking formation, so are 3 human destroyers." Sarah watched in horror as allied ships began to attack each other. The psychic influence was turning friends into enemies. If this continued, the Alliance would destroy itself. "Lazarus, we need to do something. The hunger is taking control of our people." "I know, Captain. I have been fighting its influence since we entered the system. There is only one way to stop it." "What?" There was a long pause before Lazarus answered. "The Nexus Station is not just a relay for psychic signals. It is an anchor point. The hunger uses it to maintain its connection to this galaxy. If we destroy the station completely, we can sever that connection. Then let's destroy it." "It is not that simple. The station's core is protected by shields that cannot be broken by normal weapons. To destroy it, I would need to overload my own power systems and ram the station directly." Sarah understood immediately. "That would destroy your ship, yes, and everyone on it. But more than that, Captain. My ship exists because of a temporal paradox. If I destroy the station and sever the hunger's connection to this timeline, I will also erase my own past. The timeline I came from will never exist. I will never be built." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Lazarus was talking about sacrificing not just his life, but his entire existence. He would save the galaxy, but no one would ever know he had existed. There has to be another way. There is not. The hunger is too powerful. It has controlled this galaxy for thousands of years. Only a paradox can break its hold. Around them, the battle was falling apart. More Alliance ships were turning against each other. The psychic influence was spreading faster than they could contain it. "Captain," Torres called out desperately, "the Eternal Vigil is changing course. It is heading directly for the station." Sarah watched as the dark ship accelerated toward the Nexus station. Vexai vessels tried to intercept it, but Lazarus's weapons swept them aside like leaves in a storm. "All Alliance ships, this is Lazarus. Withdraw to a safe distance immediately. What happens next will create massive energy discharges. Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. All ships, fall back, emergency withdrawal to the edge of the system. As the Alliance fleet pulled away, Sarah kept her eyes on the Eternal Vigil. The ship was glowing brighter now. Energy was building up inside its hull. She could see cracks of light spreading across its surface. The Nexus station tried to stop the approaching ship. Every weapon on the massive structure fired at once, but it was too late. The Eternal Vigil was too close and moving too fast. Captain Chun, Lazarus's voice came over the communicator one last time. Tell the galaxy that some futures are worth dying for. Tell them that the hunger can be defeated. Tell them that every species deserves to be free. The Eternal Vigil struck. The Nexus station at the exact center of its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the universe exploded. The blast was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It was not just an explosion of matter and energy, it was an explosion of time itself. Reality twisted and bent around the impact point. Colors that had no names flashed across space. The fabric of the galaxy seemed to tear and then heal itself. When the light faded, both the Eternal Vigil and the Nexus station were gone. In their place was empty space filled with slowly expanding clouds of glowing gas. But something else had changed too. Sarah could feel it immediately. The crushing psychic pressure was gone. The voice of the hunger had been silenced. Across the system, HFY ships stopped moving. Their crews were waking up from a nightmare that had lasted for generations. Captain, we are receiving communications from the HFY fleet, Torres said with wonder in his voice. They are asking for help. They say they do not know where they are or how they got here. Sarah smiled through her tears. The psychic control network was broken. The HFY Empire was collapsing as millions of aliens remembered who they used to be before the hunger enslaved them. Over the following weeks, the galaxy transformed. Former HFY colonies declared independence. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began rebuilding their civilizations. The Great War was over. The great crystal towers of Nexus Prime reached high into the purple sky. Inside the tallest tower, beings from across the galaxy sat around a massive table made of floating light. Fear filled the air like smoke from a dying fire. Ambassador Zethkar stood on his four legs and looked at the other aliens around the table. His gray skin was covered in sweat, and his three eyes kept blinking as he tried to control his terror. The hologram above the table showed the latest report from the Outer Rim. Another solar system was gone, completely gone. Friends, Zethkar sighed, his voice shaking through the translation device that hung around his neck. We have lost the Kepler colony. The room fell silent. 12 billion people had lived on those worlds just 3 days ago. Now there was nothing but empty space and floating rocks. Vexville, the military director, clicked his sharp teeth together. He was tall and thin like a walking stick, with armor that covered his insect-like body. His voice was cold and angry when he spoke. The Devourers took everything again. Our best ships could not even slow them down. They ate our energy weapons like candy and grew stronger. Other voices filled the room. Some aliens cried. Others shouted in fear or anger. The Galactic Council had ruled space for 10,000 years, but now they faced something they could not understand or fight. Zethkar raised one of his four arms to ask for quiet. Please, friends, we must think clearly. Our computers have run every possible battle plan. Our scientists have tested every weapon we know. Nothing works against these creatures. On the hologram, images of the Devourers appeared. They did not look like normal spaceships. They were alive, dark and twisted like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They moved through space like sharks through water, leaving trails of destroyed worlds behind them. They adapt to everything we try, said Dr. Melanie, the chief scientist. Her blue skin was pale with worry. When we use laser weapons, they grow mirrors on their skin. When we fire missiles, they create fields that turn the explosives back at us. When we try to ram them, they become like gas and let our ships pass through without harm. The room filled with worried voices again. For 3 months, the Devourers had moved through the galaxy like a hungry fire. No one knew where they came from. No one knew what they wanted. They just consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next system. Zethkar looked around the table at the faces of his friends and allies. These were the smartest and strongest beings in the galaxy. They had solved problems that seemed impossible before, but now they all looked lost and afraid. There is one option we have not tried, Zethkar said quietly. The room became silent again. Everyone knew what he meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Vexthal's mandibles clicked faster. You cannot be serious. The humans, they are barely civilized. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear bombs. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Yes, Zethkar said. But our scouts have sent back strange reports from the frontier regions. He touched a control on the table, and new images appeared in the hologram. These showed human ships in battle. The ships looked rough and ugly compared to the clean lines of council vessels. They were covered in extra armor welded on in random places. Weapons stuck out from their hulls like thorns on a bush. Look at how they fight, Zethkar said. The recording showed a human cargo ship facing 3 pirate vessels that were much larger and better armed. Instead of running away or calling for help, the human ship turned and flew straight at the biggest pirate ship. Just before they would crash, the human ship fired everything it had and then actually did crash into the enemy. Both ships exploded, but the other pirates ran away. They are insane, whispered Dr. Melanie. Are they? Zethkar asked. Or are they something we have forgotten how to be? More recordings played. Human miners fighting off alien raiders using mining equipment as weapons. Human explorers turning their survey ships into moving fortresses when they found hostile life forms. In every case, the humans did things that made no sense according to normal military thinking. They modify civilian ships for combat, Vexthal said with disgust. They ram their vessels into enemies instead of retreating. They use industrial tools as weapons. They fight with no regard for their own safety. Exactly, Zethkar said. We cannot predict what they will do because they do not follow logical patterns. Our military computers cannot model their behavior because it is based on emotions and instincts instead of calculations. He looked around the table again. If we cannot predict them, perhaps the Devourers cannot either. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some aliens argued that asking humans for help would be like asking wild animals to solve a mathematics problem. Others pointed out that wild animals sometimes survived where civilized beings died. Dr. Melanie pulled up more data about humans. They have been in space for less than 100 years. Their fastest ships take months to travel distances we cross in days, but look at this. New images showed human settlements on worlds that should have been impossible to live on. Burning planets where the air was poison. Frozen moons with no atmosphere. Ocean worlds where the water would dissolve most metals. They do not adapt to environments, Dr. Melanie said with wonder in her voice. They adapt environments to themselves. When they find a world too hot, they do not leave. They build machines to cool it down. When they find a world with no air, they do not wear suits. They build domes and fill them with air they make. Vexthal's clicking grew louder. This proves they are dangerous. They change everything they touch. What if they decide to change us? What if that is exactly what we need? Zethkar asked. The Devourers adapt to whatever we do. But what if we become something they cannot adapt to? What if we become more like humans? The idea was terrifying to many of the aliens around the table. The Galactic Council had spent thousands of years becoming civilized. They used logic and science and careful planning. They avoided violence when possible and used it efficiently when necessary. They were proud of how far they had come from. Their primitive ancestors, but now those primitive ancestors might be their only hope? There is something else, said Commander Theises, who had been quiet during most of the meeting. She was from a species that looked like tall cats with 6 arms. The humans have been asking questions. What kind of questions? Zethkar asked. They want to know about our weapons technology, our ship designs, our tactical databases. They say it is for trade and scientific exchange, but our analysis suggests they are studying how to fight us. The room grew cold. The idea that humans might be preparing for war against the Council was almost as frightening as the Devourers. Or, Zethkar said carefully, they are studying how to fight like us so they can fight with us. He activated another display. This one showed the current position of the Devourer fleet. They had consumed 17 solar systems and were moving toward the core worlds where most of the galaxy's population lived. We have perhaps 2 months before they reach the major colonies. 4 months before they threaten the Council worlds themselves. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons cannot hurt them. Our defenses cannot slow them down. Zethkar looked directly at each alien around the table. We can die with our pride intact, or we can ask for help from beings we do not understand and hope they can do what we cannot. The vote was close. Many aliens voted against contacting the humans. They feared that bringing such violent and unpredictable beings into the war would make things worse. But fear of the Devourers was stronger than fear of humanity. When the final count was made, the decision was clear. The Galactic Council would send a message to Earth. As the meeting broke up and the aliens began to leave, Vexthal approached Zethkar. His mandibles were still clicking, but more slowly now. If we do this, the military director said, we may win the war against the Devourers only to find ourselves facing a war against the humans. Zethkar looked out through the crystal walls of the tower at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were moving closer. Somewhere else, humans were building their strange ships and planning their impossible plans. Perhaps, he said. But at least we will be alive to fight that war. The message was sent on old radio frequencies that humans had used when they first learned to communicate across space. It was simple and direct, the way humans seemed to prefer their communication. This is Ambassador Zethkar of the Galactic Council, speaking to the government of Earth and her colonies. We face an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy. We have tried everything in our power to stop them and failed. We formally request immediate assistance from humanity in this matter of galactic survival. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying with it the hopes and fears of trillions of beings. It would take time to reach Earth and more time for the humans to respond. But Zethkar had studied the humans enough to know one thing for certain. When someone asked them for help against impossible odds, they never said no. They just started planning how to make the impossible possible. Captain Sarah Chun was drinking coffee and reading maintenance reports when the message arrived. Her ship, the Ragnar's Wrath, sat docked at Kepler Station like a wounded animal getting patched up. The ship had started life as a cargo hauler, but Sarah and her crew had changed it into something else entirely. The hull was covered in armor plates from 6 different ships. Weapon mounts stuck out at odd angles. The engine glowed so hot that other ships had to dock far away to avoid getting burned. It was ugly and dangerous, and Sarah loved it like her own child. "Captain," called out her communications officer, a young man named Tommy Park. "We're getting a weird signal on the old emergency frequencies." Sarah put down her coffee. The old emergency frequencies had not been used for 20 years. Only historians and radio hobbyists remembered they existed. "Put it through," she said. The voice that came through the speakers was strange. It spoke English, but with an accent that sounded like it was being translated by a machine. The message was short and simple, but it made Sarah's blood run cold. When the message ended, Sarah stared at the speakers for a long moment. Then she started laughing. "Tommy, send a copy of that message to Earth Defense Command, Mars Central, and the Outer Colony Council. Mark it Priority 1. Yes, ma'am. Should I include our response?" "Not yet. First, I want to talk to some people within." 6 hours, every major human military leader was either heading for the meeting point or already talking on secure channels. The response was faster than anything the aliens had seen from human governments before. Admiral Marcus Torres received the message while reviewing fleet exercises near Jupiter. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of working on ships before he became an officer. He read the message 3 times, then called his staff into the war room. "Gentlemen and ladies," he said, looking around at his officers, "we just got invited to the biggest fight in galactic history." His tactical officer, Commander Liu, frowned at the data. "Sir, if these aliens are telling the truth, we're looking at an enemy that has destroyed multiple spacefaring civilizations. Our technology is primitive compared to what the Galactic Council has." Admiral Torres smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Commander, our technology has never been our strongest weapon." Meanwhile, on Mars, Commodore Yuki Tanaka was already preparing her ships for departure. The Mars Free State had always been different from Earth. Mars was a hard world that killed anyone who made mistakes. The people who lived there were tough and practical and very good at making do with whatever they had. Tanaka's ships reflected this attitude. They were built like weapons first and life support systems second. The crews called them coffin ships, because they were nearly as dangerous to their own people as they were to enemies. But they were fast and they hit hard and they never, ever gave up. "How long to reach the meeting point?" Tanaka asked her navigator. 18 hours if we push. The engine's hard. Push them harder. If someone is asking for help against impossible odds, we don't want to be late to the party. The most unusual response came from the outer colonies. Captain Yakov Petrov was not officially part of any military. He was a former pirate, former miner, former smuggler, and current captain of the ship Pandemonium. When the message reached the outer rim, Petrov was in the middle of converting a broken asteroid mining station into a mobile weapons platform. His crew was a mix of criminals, engineers, and people who were too crazy for normal jobs. They had somehow managed to acquire technology that should not have existed, weapons that violated several laws of physics, and a complete disregard for safety regulations. "Boys and girls," Petrov announced over the ship's intercom, "we just got the best job offer in the history of the universe." His chief engineer, a woman named Rosa Santos, looked up from the experimental engine she was building. "What kind of job?" "The kind where we get to shoot at something that everyone else is afraid of." Santos grinned. "I'll prep the fun stuff." The meeting point was a neutral space station orbiting a dead star. The humans arrived in ships that made the alien observers very nervous. Nothing matched. Every ship looked like it had been built by different people with different ideas about what a spaceship should look like. Admiral Torres arrived first in the Indomitable, a proper military vessel with clean lines and organized weapon systems. It looked normal except for the modifications that let it carry twice as many missiles as it was designed for. Commodore Tanaka's squadron looked like flying weapons. Her ships were all sharp angles and armor plating with engines that burned so bright they hurt to look at. They moved through space like angry hornets, looking for something to sting. Captain Petrov's ship was the strangest of all. The Pandemonium looked like someone had taken parts from a dozen different ships and welded them together with no plan at all. It bristled with weapons that had no names and equipment that should not have worked. The engine exhaust changed colors as it burned, and space itself seemed to bend around the ship in ways that made alien scientists very uncomfortable. The alien delegation was waiting for them in the station's main conference room. Ambassador Zethkar tried to hide his fear as he watched the human commanders enter. They moved like predators, constantly alert and ready for violence. Admiral Torres took the lead. He was polite but direct. "Ambassador, we received your message. Before we discuss helping you, we need to know everything about this enemy." "Of course," Zethkar said. He activated the holographic display and began showing the humans everything the Council knew about the Devourers. The presentation lasted 2 hours. The aliens showed battle recordings, technical analysis, and detailed reports of every failed attempt to stop the enemy. They explained how the Devourers adapted to every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. The Council had tried. The humans watched in silence. They asked technical questions about energy levels and adaptation rates. They wanted to know about response times and regeneration capabilities, but mostly they just watched and learned. When the presentation ended, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Captain Chun leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "You people think too much," she said. Ambassador Zethkar blinked his 3 eyes. "I do not understand. You see an enemy that adapts to whatever you do, so you try to think of something they can't adapt to, but that's backwards thinking." Admiral Torres nodded. "The problem isn't that they adapt to your weapons. The problem is that you're using weapons they can adapt to." Commodore Tanaka studied the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had spent years fighting in impossible situations. You fight like you're trying to solve a puzzle. But this isn't a puzzle, it's a bar fight. Captain Petrov was grinning. "Like a maniac. Show us where they are now." The aliens updated the display to show the current position of the Devour fleet. They were moving through a system called Tau Ceti, consuming the planets one by one. "How long before they finish there and move on?" Admiral Torres asked. "Perhaps 6 days," Zethkar replied. "Good. That gives us time to prepare." Dr. Melanie, the alien scientist, leaned forward. "Prepare what?" "We have shown you that conventional weapons are useless against them." Captain Chun smiled. Who said anything about conventional weapons? The humans spent the next hour asking questions that made no sense to the aliens. They wanted to know about stellar mechanics and gravitational fields. They asked about the physics of hyperspace travel and the energy requirements for planetary destruction. They seemed more interested in the environment where the battle would take place than in the enemy they would be fighting. "I still do not understand your strategy," Vexthal said. His mandibles clicked with frustration. "That's because we don't have a strategy," Admiral Torres replied. "We have an approach." "What is the difference?" "A strategy is a plan to achieve a specific goal using known methods. An approach is a way of thinking that lets you adapt to whatever happens." Captain Petrov laughed. "You want to know our approach? Here it is. We're going to show up with the biggest, nastiest, most dangerous ships we can build. Then we're going to start shooting and see what happens." "But the Devourers will adapt to whatever you do," Dr. Melanie protested. "Will they?" Commodore Tanaka asked. "Let me ask you something. How do you adapt to insanity?" The aliens looked at each other in confusion. "Your enemy has spent millions of years learning to counter logical tactics," Admiral Torres explained. "They know how to deal with energy weapons, kinetic weapons, exotic matter weapons. They know how to counter every rational military strategy ever developed. But what they don't know," Captain Chun added, "is how to deal with people who don't use rational strategies." Captain Petrov was nodding enthusiastically. "They've never faced someone who looks at a problem and says, 'I bet I could fix this with a bigger explosion.'" The meeting continued for several more hours. The humans asked for detailed technical specifications about devourer biology and capabilities. They wanted to know about every battle, every encounter, every piece of data the Council had collected. But they also asked questions that seemed completely unrelated. They wanted to know about stellar engineering and industrial capacity. They asked about mining operations and manufacturing capabilities. They seemed to be planning something much bigger than a simple military engagement. "There is one thing I must ask," Ambassador Zethkar said, as the meeting wound down. "If you help us defeat the Devourers, what do you want in return?" The humans looked at each other. Admiral Torres spoke for all of them. "We want to be left alone to do our own thing. No membership in your council, no interference in our affairs. Just recognition that we exist and the right to handle our own problems our own way. That is all." "But surely you want access to our technology, our trade networks, our knowledge bases." Captain Chun shook her head. "We like building our own stuff. It's more fun that way." As the aliens prepared to leave, Ambassador Zethkar had one more question. "Admiral Torres, may I ask why you agreed to help us?" You gain very little from this arrangement. Torres thought for a moment, because you asked nicely and because we were getting bored. After the aliens left, the human commanders gathered in Admiral Torres' quarters. The room was quiet as they considered what they had just committed to do. Are we really going to try this? Commander Liu asked. Try what? Torres replied. We haven't even decided what we're going to do yet. Captain. Petrov was studying star charts and making notes that would have terrified any sane engineer. I have some ideas. That's what I was afraid of, Commodore Tanaka said, but she was smiling when she said it. Captain Chen looked around at her fellow humans. They were about to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations spanning thousands of years. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and fighting with technology that was primitive compared to what the enemy had already defeated. You know what? She said. This is going to be fun. Outside the station, human ships were already beginning to gather. Word had spread through the colonies faster than official channels could carry it. Miners were converting their equipment into weapons. Traders were adding armor to their cargo holds. Even civilian vessels were volunteering to join the fleet. They were not the most advanced ships in the galaxy. They were not the most elegant or efficient. But they were built by humans, crewed by humans, and commanded by people who thought. Impossible odds were just another word for Tuesday. The Devourers had never faced anything like them before, and they were about to find out why that was a very serious problem. The human fleet that gathered at the staging area looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Ships arrived from every corner of human space, and no two looked alike. Some were proper military vessels with neat rows of weapons and clean armor plating. Others were cargo ships covered in metal plates welded on wherever they would fit. A few were mining vessels that still had rock drills attached to their hulls. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Ragnar's Wrath and watched the chaos through her viewports. Her ship was docked next to a converted passenger liner that someone had turned into a missile platform. On the other side was a mining ship that glowed with radiation from its modified fusion engines. Tommy, how many ships do we have now? She asked her communications officer. Tommy Park checked his screens and shook his head. I stopped counting at 300, Captain. Ships keep arriving every few hours. What kind of ships? Everything. We've got military cruisers, cargo haulers, mining ships, research vessels, passenger liners, and at least 6 ships that I can't identify at all. Chun nodded. That sounded about right for a human fleet. When word had spread that someone needed help fighting an impossible enemy, volunteers had come from everywhere. Not just military personnel, but miners and traders and explorers and even some reformed pirates. The alien observers were having nervous breakdowns trying to understand the human organization system. Council observer Quillith had sent 17 reports back to Nexus Prime, each one more confused than the last. They have no proper chain of command, Quillith reported to Ambassador Zethkar. Ships arrive, declare their intention to help, and then begin modifying themselves for combat. No one gives them orders, no one assigns them positions. They simply organize themselves into groups based on what they want to do. The groups that formed made no sense to alien military thinking. There were the fire ships, vessels that had been loaded with experimental weapons and improvised explosives. The heavy hitters were mining ships and industrial vessels that had been turned into mobile weapons platforms. The speed demons were fast ships designed to cause confusion and chaos, but the group that worried the alien observers most was the one led by Captain Yakov Petrov. They called themselves Legends Dangerous, and they seemed to be competing to see who could build the most insane weapons. Petrov's ship, Pandemonium, sat at the center of this group like a spider in a web. Over the past week, his crew had made modifications that violated several laws of physics and at least one treaty about safe space travel. What exactly are you building over there? Admiral Torres asked during one of the daily briefings. Petrov grinned. His beard was singed from working too close to dangerous equipment, and his eyes had the look of someone who enjoyed playing with explosives. We're making what my engineer calls a physics violation drive, he said. It takes the normal rules about how energy and matter work and politely asks them to step aside. Is it safe? Commodore Tanaka asked. Define safe. Will it kill you when you turn it on? Probably not. Will it kill everyone else when you turn it on? Petrov thought about that for a moment. I'll let you know after we test it. Admiral Torres rubbed his forehead. Leading a normal military fleet was hard enough. Leading a collection of humans who thought safety regulations were suggestions was giving him headaches. Captain Petrov, please tell me you're not planning to test an experimental physics violation drive in the middle of our staging area. Of course not, Petrov said. We're going to test it during the battle. That way, if something goes wrong, at least we'll take some enemies with us. The modifications being made to the human ships were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Captain Chin's crew had replaced her cargo bays with weapon systems that had been salvaged from 6 different alien technologies. The weapons didn't match, and they probably shouldn't work together, but her chief engineer swore they would create interesting effects. When fired, Commodore Tanaka's ships were being upgraded with armor plating made from compressed asteroids, and engines that burned hot enough to melt nearby space debris. Her crews called the modifications barely controlled stellar engines, which was either very accurate or very optimistic. The converted civilian ships were even more creative. Passenger liner had been turned into a missile boat with launch tubes installed where the swimming pools used to be. A research vessel had been equipped with experimental beam weapons that were designed to study star formation but worked surprisingly well for destroying enemy ships. Dr. Melanie, the alien scientist, tried to understand what the humans were doing by studying their technical specifications. After 3 days, she gave up and sent a report that simply said, "Human military engineering appears to be based on the principle that if something is dangerous enough, it becomes a weapon." The supply situation was equally confusing to alien observers. Normal military fleets required careful planning to ensure adequate food, fuel, and ammunition. The human fleet seemed to create its own supplies out of raw materials and creative thinking. Mining ships that had joined the fleet spent their time processing asteroids into raw metals. Manufacturing ships that normally built space stations were retooling to produce weapons and armor. Even some of the smaller ships had been converted into mobile factories. They are turning the entire fleet into a self-sufficient industrial complex, Observer Quillith reported. They are not just preparing for a single battle. They are preparing to sustain a campaign of indefinite length. What the aliens didn't understand was that this was how humans had always worked. When faced with a problem, they didn't just solve it. They built the tools to solve it, then improved the tools, then found new problems to solve with the improved tools. Captain Petrov's group exemplified this approach. They had started with one experimental weapon system and had somehow expanded it into a collection of devices that would have made alien weapons designers run away screaming. "Rosa, show me what you've done to the main engine," Petrov said to his chief engineer. Rosa Santos led him through the ship to the engine room. What had once been a normal fusion reactor was now something that belonged in a physics textbook's chapter on theoretical impossibilities. "We've added a miniaturized black hole generator," Rosa explained. "It creates a gravity well that we can use to manipulate space-time around the ship. Can we use it as a weapon?" "Captain, we can use it as anything we want." Reality becomes very flexible when you have your own personal black hole. Petrov nodded as if this made perfect sense. "What about the stellar fusion accelerator?" "That's the fun part. We can feed matter directly into nuclear fusion and use the black hole's gravity to accelerate the plasma to near light speed. Basically, we can turn the ship into a temporary star." "How temporary?" "Depends on how much matter we feed it." "Could be minutes, could be hours. And we can control the direction of the energy output, more or less. The controls are a bit touchy, but I think we can avoid accidentally sterilizing any friendly planets." This conversation was being monitored by alien observers who were trying to understand human tactical planning. When they heard it, 3 of them fainted and 2 others requested immediate transfer to non-combat duties. Admiral Torres was also monitoring the conversation, but his reaction was different. He called Captain Chun and Commodore Tonica to a private meeting. "We need to talk about Petrov," he said. "What about him?" Chun asked. "He's building weapons that could destroy solar systems. His ship is becoming more dangerous than most space stations. If something goes wrong during the battle, he could accidentally kill everyone on our side," Tanaka shrugged. "So we make sure we're not too close to him when he starts shooting." "That's not the point. The point is that we're supposed to be helping the aliens, not scaring them to death." Chun looked at the tactical displays showing Petrov's ship. The pandemonium was surrounded by energy readings that shouldn't exist and gravitational anomalies that made nearby space navigation hazardous. "Marcus," she said, "the aliens asked for our help because their logical, safe, rational approach wasn't working. If we start acting logical and safe and rational, we'll fail just like they did." "She's right," Tanaka added. "The enemy adapts to conventional threats. Petrov isn't conventional, he's not even sane. That makes him our best weapon against something that can adapt to everything else." Torres knew they were right, but that didn't make him feel better about it. He had spent his career trying to minimize risks and ensure mission success through careful planning. Now he was betting everything on people who treated careful planning as something to ignore. "All right," he said finally. "But I want to make sure everyone understands the stakes. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for every intelligent species in the galaxy. If we lose, everything dies." "If we lose," Chun said, "it won't be because we weren't dangerous enough." The final week of preparation was a blur of activity. Ships that had arrived separately began working together in ways that defied military organization charts. Crews shared equipment and expertise across faction lines. Engineers from different ships collaborated on projects that would have been impossible for any single vessel to complete. The result was a fleet that looked like it had been designed by a committee of mad scientists. Nothing matched, nothing followed standard procedures. Nothing made sense according to normal military thinking, but it worked. When Admiral Torres called the final briefing before departure, he looked around at the commanders who had volunteered for what might be the most dangerous mission in galactic history. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "in 12 hours, we depart for Tau Ceti to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations spanning millions of years. Our ships are experimental. Our weapons are untested. Our tactics are improvised." He paused and looked at each face around the table. "Any questions?" Captain Petrov raised his hand. "Just one. Are we allowed to use experimental weapons that might accidentally tear holes in space-time? If it helps us win, yes." "Good, because I wasn't going to leave them behind anyway." "Captain," Chun laughed. "Jakob, if you accidentally destroy the universe, I'm going to be very annoyed with you." "Don't worry. If I destroy the universe, you won't be around long enough to be annoyed." This was the moment when the alien observers finally understood what they were witnessing. The humans weren't just preparing for battle. They were preparing to rewrite the rules of battle. They were going to face an enemy that adapted to everything by becoming something that couldn't be adapted to. They were going to become legends, dangerous enough to save the galaxy. As the fleet prepared to depart, Captain Torres received a final message from Ambassador Zethkar. "Admiral, the Council wishes you success in your mission. Please remember that the fate of trillions depends on your actions." Torres sent back a simple reply. "We understand. Don't worry, we've got this." The alien diplomat stared at the message for a long time. 3 words. "We've got this." Such simple confidence in the face of impossible odds. Either the humans were the answer to the galaxy's prayers, or they were about to provide the most spectacular failure in recorded history. Zethkar found himself hoping it would be the former, because if it was the latter, there wouldn't be anyone left to record it. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare becoming real. Their ships were not built, they were grown. Dark flesh mixed with twisted metal to create vessels that pulsed with hungry life. Each ship was different, shaped by the civilizations it had consumed, and the battles it had survived. Captain Sarah Chun watched them appear on her sensors and felt her blood turn cold. The enemy ships were huge. The smallest one was larger than Earth's biggest space station. The largest was the size of a small moon and covered in weapons that had no names in any human language. "Tommy, how many are there?" she asked. Her communications officer's voice was tight with fear. "I count 47 major vessels, Captain. Plus hundreds of smaller craft? And they're all alive?" "The energy readings suggest they are biological constructs with technological augmentation. They're not just ships, they're creatures." Shun nodded. She had read the alien reports, but seeing the Devourers in person was different. These things had eaten entire star systems. They had destroyed civilizations that had ruled space for thousands of years. They were death itself given form and purpose, but Qin was not afraid. She was excited. "All ships, this is Ragnar's wrath," she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "Remember what we talked about? These things adapt to logical tactics. So don't. Use logical tactics. Tommy, patch me through to Admiral Torres." Torres' voice came through clearly. "Sarah, I see them." "Are you ready?" "Born ready, Marcus. What's the plan?" "Same as always." "'Cause maximum chaos and see what happens." "I like it. Simple and direct." The human fleet spread out across space in a formation that would have made alien military analysts weep. There was no proper battle line, no organized squadrons, no logical positioning based on ship capabilities. Instead, the humans had arranged themselves based on what they wanted to. The fast ships clustered together near the edge of the formation, ready to dart in and cause confusion. The heavy ships formed loose groups that could provide mutual support. The experimental ships scattered randomly throughout the fleet, ready to try whatever insane weapons they had built. At the center of it all, Captain Petrov's pandemonium hung in space like a dark star. Energy readings from his ship were so intense that other vessels had to stay at least 1,000 kilometers away to avoid getting fried by radiation. The Devourers completed their emergence and began to move toward the human fleet. They moved like a school of predatory fish, flowing through space with perfect coordination. Their weapons began to glow as they prepared for battle, but the humans didn't wait for them to get ready. Captain Chun's Ragnar's wrath fired first. Not at the enemy ships, but at the space around them. Her modified weapons created cascading energy waves that interfered with the Devourer's emergence from hyperspace. Ships that were still materializing suddenly found themselves caught half in normal space and half in hyperspace. The effect was immediate and devastating. 3 Devourer ships were torn apart by the conflicting dimensional forces. Another 5 were damaged and struggling to complete their transition to normal space. The Devourers had never experienced anything like it. In millions of years of warfare, no enemy had ever attacked them during the vulnerable moment of hyperspace emergence. Their adaptation systems immediately began analyzing the attack to develop countermeasures, but before they could adapt, Commodore Tanaka's squadron struck. Her ships came in fast and low, riding the solar wind like surfers on an ocean wave. They used the star's own magnetic field to accelerate beyond what their engines could normally achieve. The Devourer's sensors, designed to track conventional spacecraft, lost them in the stellar radiation. Tanaka's ships appeared among the enemy formation like angry hornets. Their weapons were not designed to destroy the massive Devourer ships. Instead, they targeted the smaller symbiotic creatures that lived on the hulls of the larger vessels. The Devourers used these symbiotes for repairs and adaptation. Without them, the larger ships became vulnerable to sustained damage. Tanaka's crews had studied the alien data carefully and identified this weakness, but they didn't attack the symbiotes with weapons. They attacked them with music. The Mars-free state had discovered that certain sound frequencies could disrupt biological processes. Tanaka's ships broadcast sonic weapons that turned the symbiotes' own nervous systems against them. The creatures began attacking their host ships instead of protecting them. Again, the Devourers had never faced anything like it. They began adapting their symbiotes to filter out harmful frequencies, but the humans had prepared for this. Each Ship broadcast different frequencies, creating a chaotic symphony of destruction that was impossible to filter completely. While the enemy was dealing with sonic attacks and dimensional interference, the converted civilian ships began their own assault. The passenger liner that had been turned into a missile platform launched everything it had. But these were not normal missiles. Each warhead contained a small piece of exotic matter that had been salvaged from alien technology. When the missiles hit their targets, they didn't explode in the usual sense. Instead, they created tiny pockets of altered physics where the normal rules of reality stopped working. Some areas experienced time dilation, causing parts of enemy ships to age thousands of years in seconds. Other areas had their fundamental forces reversed, causing matter to repel itself instead of holding together. A few areas simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way. The Devourer's adaptation systems went into overdrive trying to understand what was happening to them. They had protocols for dealing with energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological weapons, and even exotic matter weapons. But they had no protocols for dealing with weapons that attacked the basic structure of reality itself. They struggled to adapt. More human ships joined the battle. Mining vessels used their planet-cracking charges to create artificial gravity wells that trapped enemy ships. Research vessels fired modified stellar analysis beams that turned enemy armor into plasma. Even some of the cargo ships got into the action, ramming enemy vessels while broadcasting messages that roughly translated to surprise. But the real show was just beginning. Captain Petrov had been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal what he and his crew had built. As the battle raged around him, he gave the order that would either save the galaxy or destroy it. Rosa, activate emergency protocol, burn everything. His chief engineer grinned and began the activation sequence for their physics violation drive. Deep in the heart of pandemonium, the miniaturized black hole generator came online. Reality around the ship began to bend and twist as gravity fields that shouldn't exist started warping spacetime. "Captain," Rosa called out, "we're approaching the point of no return. Once we go full activation, we won't be able to shut it down." "How long will we have?" 17 minutes before the ship becomes uninhabitable. Maybe 20 if we're lucky. "And how much damage can we do in 17 minutes? Rosa's grin became even wider. "Enough to make the universe sit up and take notice." Petrov nodded. "Do it." The pandemonium began to change. The black hole generator created a gravitational anomaly that pulled matter from the surrounding space directly into nuclear fusion. The ship became a miniature star, burning with the light of 1,000 suns, but this was not just a massive explosion. The black hole's gravity well allowed Petrov to control the direction and intensity of the fusion reaction. He could aim stellar, fire like a weapon, and focus the power of a star into a beam narrow enough to cut through planets. The first target was the largest Devourer ship. Petrov aimed the stellar beam at its center and fired. The beam contained the concentrated power of nuclear fusion accelerated to near light speed by artificial gravity. It didn't just hit the enemy ship, it erased it from existence. The Devourer fleet recoiled in shock. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for an enemy that could wield the power of stars as a personal weapon. Their adaptation systems couldn't even begin to analyze what had happened because the attack had been made using forces that most species couldn't even detect, let alone control. But Petrov wasn't finished. For the next 16 minutes, he turned pandemonium into a mobile supernova. The ship became a weapon of mass destruction that painted space in colors that had no names. Enemy ships that came too close were simply vaporized. Those that stayed far away were picked off by precisely aimed stellar beams. The rest of the human fleet took advantage of the chaos. While the Devourers were trying to understand how a single ship could wield the power of a star, the other human vessels pressed their attacks. They used weapons that made no sense, tactics that defied logic, and strategies that seemed to be based on pure insanity. Captain Chang's ship rammed a Devourer vessel while firing everything it had. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but Chun had timed it perfectly. Her weapons overloaded the enemy's adaptation systems just as the Collision occurred, causing a cascade failure that destroyed 3 more enemy ships. Commodore Tanaka's squadron began using the Devourer's own adaptive abilities against them. They would fire one type of weapon to make the enemy adapt, then immediately switch to something completely different. By constantly changing tactics, every few seconds they kept the enemy adaptation systems in a state of confusion. The converted civilian ships proved to be even more unpredictable than the military vessels. A cargo hauler used its loading equipment to physically grab an enemy ship and throw it into another one. A research vessel created an artificial wormhole that swallowed a Devourer ship and spat it out in a different solar system. But perhaps the most effective tactic was the one used by the mining ships. They had filled their cargo holds with processed asteroids and simply threw rocks at the enemy. The Devourers had adapted to energy weapons and exotic matter, but they had no specific adaptations for being hit by large chunks of metal traveling at high speed. As the battle continued, something unprecedented began to happen. The Devourers' adaptation systems started breaking down. They had evolved over millions of years to counter logical, predictable threats. But the humans weren't logical or predictable. Every time the Devourers adapted to one human tactic, the humans would try something completely different. They didn't follow patterns that could be analyzed and countered. They fought like they were making up the rules as they went along, which was exactly what they were doing. All ships, Admiral Torres broadcast. The enemy is starting to show confusion. Press the attack and keep changing tactics. Don't let them figure out what we're doing. How can they figure out what we're doing? Captain Chun replied. We don't know what we're doing. That's the point. The Devourer fleet, which had conquered entire civilizations, found itself facing something it had never encountered before. An enemy that couldn't be understood because it didn't understand itself. When the 17 minutes were up, Captain Petrov's ship finally exhausted its ability to maintain the stellar fusion reaction. Pandemonium went dark as its engines shut down and its crew began emergency evacuation procedures, but the damage was done. Of the 47 major Devourer ships that had entered the battle, only 12 remained functional. The rest had been destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist, tactics that made no sense, and strategies that seemed to be based on pure chaos. The surviving Devourers tried to retreat, but the humans weren't finished with them yet. All ships, Torres ordered. Pursue and destroy. Don't let any of them escape. The human fleet chased the fleeing Devourers across the solar system like pack hunters pursuing wounded prey. They had learned that their enemy could be beaten, and they intended to finish the job. By the time the last Devourer ship was destroyed, the Battle of Tau Ceti had become legend. The humans had faced an enemy that had never been defeated and had not just won, but had done it in a way that redefined what victory meant. They had turned war into art, chaos into strategy, and madness into the most effective military doctrine in galactic history. The silence after the battle was almost as shocking as the battle itself. For 3 days, space around Tau Ceti had burned with the light of artificial stars and the screams of dying ships. Now there was only the quiet hum of human vessels moving through the debris field like scavengers after a storm. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of Ragnar's Wrath and watched her crew work. They were not mourning their victory or celebrating their survival. They were salvaging useful materials from the wreckage of the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Tommy, what's our status? She asked. Her communications officer looked up from his screens. We lost 6 ships completely, Captain. Another 20 are heavily damaged but repairable. The rest of the fleet is mostly intact. Chun nodded. 6 ships. Lost against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. It was better than anyone had hoped for. What about Petrov's ship? The Pandemonium is dead in space, but the crew survived. They're already asking if they can have some of the Devourer wreckage to build a new engine. Chun laughed. Of course they were. Captain Petrov and his people treated near-death experiences like learning opportunities. The communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from Admiral Torres. All ships, we have incoming visitors. The Galactic Council is sending A delegation to assess the battle results, Chun frowned. She had hoped they would have more time to clean up before the aliens arrived. The battlefield was a mess of twisted metal, exotic energy signatures, and chunks of matter that no longer followed normal physics. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 6 hours, Torres replied. "Try to make sure nothing explodes before they get here." 6 hours later, the alien delegation arrived in a fleet of pristine council ships. They moved carefully through the debris field, their sensors working overtime to catalog the destruction. The readings they got back made no sense. Ambassador Zethkar stood in the observation deck of his flagship and stared at the wreckage. He had come expecting to find the remains of brave human ships scattered among the still dangerous hulks of damaged Devourer vessels. Instead, he found something impossible. "Report," he ordered his science officer. Dr. Melanie checked her instruments 3 times before answering. "Ambassador, I am detecting no functional Devourer vessels. None. They have all been completely destroyed." "That cannot be correct. I have run the scans 5 times. The energy signatures match Devourer biotechnology, but every single vessel has been reduced to inert matter." Zethkar felt his leg shake. The Devourers had been unstoppable for millions of years. They had consumed civilizations that spanned entire galaxies, and the humans had destroyed them all in a single battle. What about human casualties? 6 ships lost, 20 damaged. The rest appear to be functional and are currently engaged in salvage operations. The alien delegation transferred to the human fleet's command ship, Admiral Torres' vessel Indomitable. The meeting room was crowded with human officers who looked tired but satisfied. They had the air of people who had just finished a difficult but successful job. Admiral Torres stood to greet the aliens. His uniform was singed and his face was streaked with soot, but he smiled warmly. "Ambassador Zethkar, welcome. I hope your trip was pleasant." Zethkar tried to process what he was seeing. These humans had just fought the most dangerous enemy in galactic history, and they were acting like they had completed routine maintenance work. "Admiral Torres, my science officer reports that you have destroyed the entire Devourer fleet." "That's correct. How?" Torres shrugged. "We shot at them until they stopped moving. Then we shot at them some more to make sure." "But the Devourers were supposed to be invincible." "They adapted to every weapon, every strategy, every tactic ever used against them." Captain Chung leaned back in her chair. "They adapted to logical weapons and logical strategies?" "We didn't use logical weapons and logical strategies." "I do not understand." Commodore Tanaka pulled up a tactical display showing the battle. The Devourer's adaptation systems were designed to counter threats that made sense. When faced with threats that made no sense, the systems broke down. Dr. Melanie studied the tactical data with growing amazement. "You weaponize chaos itself, more or less," Torres agreed. "We realized that if we couldn't outthink them, we could out-crazy them." The alien scientists spent hours trying to understand what the humans had done. The battle reports read like science fiction, ships that turned into stars, weapons that attacked the structure of reality, tactics that seemed to be based on pure randomness. "This sonic weapon that disrupted their biosystems," Dr. Melanie said to Commodore Tanaka. "How did you know it would work?" "We didn't," Tanaka replied. "We just tried it to see what would happen. And the dimensional interference attack that Captain Chun used? I thought it might be interesting," Chun said. "Turns out it was." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. The humans had saved the galaxy by trying things to see if they were interesting. Ambassador Zethkar cleared his throat. "Admiral Torres, the Galactic Council wishes to offer humanity full membership. You would have voting rights, access to our technology databases, and trading privileges throughout Council space." The human officers looked at each other. Torres spoke for all of them. "Thank you, but we'll pass." "I beg your pardon?" "We appreciate the offer, but we prefer to do our own thing." Zethkar was stunned. "But surely you want access to our advanced technology. Our star drive systems are centuries ahead of yours. Our weapons technology could revolutionize your military capabilities." Captain Chun shook her head. We like building our own stuff. It's more fun that way. More fun? Sure, where's the challenge in using weapons that someone else designed? We prefer to figure things out for ourselves. The alien delegation spent another hour trying to convince the humans to accept council membership. They offered technology, trade agreements, territorial rights, and scientific exchanges. The humans politely declined everything. All we want, Torres said finally, is to be left alone to handle our own problems our own way. We'll help out if someone asks noisily, but we don't want to join any clubs. As the aliens prepared to leave, Ambassador Zethkar had one last question. Admiral Torres, may I ask why you agreed to help us? What did you gain from this arrangement? Torres thought for a moment. Because you asked nicely and because we were bored? Bored? Space is big and mostly empty. Fighting an invincible enemy. Seemed like it might be entertaining. And was it? Torres grinned. Best fun we've had in years. After the alien delegation left, the human commanders gathered for one final briefing. The battle was over, the enemy was defeated, and their ships were repaired and ready for the journey home. So what now? Captain Chun asked. Now we go back to our regular jobs, Torres replied. You go back to hauling cargo. Tanaka goes back to running freight routes and P-ITAR-OV... He looked around the room. Where is Petrov? Commodore Tanaka checked her scanners. His ship left 3 hours ago. He didn't say where he was going. Did he take any of the Devourer wreckage with him? About half of it, Torres sighed. I probably don't want to know what he's planning to build with that, Captain Chun laughed. Knowing Jakob, he's probably going to turn it into a coffee machine that can brew beverages using stellar fusion. That actually sounds useful, Tanaka said. The human fleet dispersed over the next few days. Ships that had fought together as brothers in arms went back to being competitors and strangers. The miners returned to their asteroids. The traders returned to their routes. The military vessels returned to their patrol zones, but something had changed. Word of the battle spread through human space faster than light-speed communication. The story grew with each telling. The humans who had faced the invincible enemy and won became legends. Captain Chun returned to her cargo runs, but her reputation preceded her. Pirates who had once threatened freight convoys now fled when they heard that Ragnar's wrath was in the area. Her manifest included a new item, guaranteed safe delivery backed by experience in cosmic pest control. Commodore Tanaka established a new shipping route that connected the outer colonies with the core worlds. Her ships carried a warning beacon that simply said, Mars Free State Express, we deliver everything, including divine retribution. Attacks on her convoys dropped to 0. Admiral Torres returned to his duties with Earth Defense Command, but he found himself fielding strange requests. Other species had heard about the Battle of Tau Ceti and wanted to hire human military advisors. He politely declined most offers, but he did establish a consulting service for species facing impossible military situations. Captain Petrov and the crew of Pandemonium simply vanished into deep space. But reports began to filter in from the frontier regions. A ship that burned like a star had been seen helping colonists fight off alien raiders. The same ship had appeared near a research station that was being threatened by space pirates, and the pirates had suddenly developed an urgent need to be somewhere else. When contacted by authorities, Petrov would only say that he was conducting field tests on some new equipment, and that people shouldn't worry unless they saw him running away from something. The Galactic Council tried to understand what had happened at Tau Ceti. Their military analysts wrote reports that filled entire databases. Their scientists published papers that redefined their understanding of adaptive warfare. Their philosophers debated the implications of a species that treated impossible odds as entertainment. But the conclusion they reached was always the same. The humans had saved the galaxy not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through sheer bloody-minded determination to try things that no sane species would consider. The final report filed by Ambassador Zethkar became required reading in xenobiology departments throughout Council space. The last paragraph read, When asked why they answered our call for help, Admiral Torres replied that they were bored, and someone had asked nervously. Further inquiry into human motivational psychology has been classified as unnecessarily dangerous to galactic mental health. It is recommended that future contact with humanity be limited to emergency situations where conventional solutions have proven inadequate. In the outer rim territories where dangers still lurked between the stars, a new saying emerged among the various species. When faced with impossible odds, someone would inevitably suggest contacting the humans. The standard response became, "Save that for when we're really desperate." Those people are crazy, but they said it with respect. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When aliens asked for help, humanity didn't just answer the call. They answered with fire, fury, and the kind of beautiful madness that turned impossible odds into routine Tuesday entertainment. And somewhere in the void between stars, Captain Yakov Petrov was still conducting field tests on equipment that made reality nervous. The Devourers had thought they had adapted to everything the galaxy could throw at them. They had never encountered a species that adapted the galaxy to them. That had been their final mistake.